everybody goes through different experiences trying to get to wherever they want to go. And what I'm hearing, what I'm listening to when you're describing that is thinking about resiliency.
Hmm.
I have to imagine that there was probably many times throughout that experience and those experiences that you failed,
Hmm.
that you had to go through immense adversity to try
Hmm.
to pick yourself back up and go back again and try it again and keep going till you got to the next year and the next year to ultimately where you are today, right? The
Hmm.
payoff.
For
And
sure.
I think that's important. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you look at the stories of most successful people, they always have some point in their life where they had a failure or they struggled. It's very rare for someone, unless they come from a very privileged background, to
Correct.
just kind of coast through life and always win. I mean, you can even talk about people like Michael Jordan, being cut from the basketball team and then
Mm-hmm.
having to, you know, pick himself back up and have faith in his skills and everything like that. I
Yeah.
think that behind every success story, you're going to find that people do fail. And when you do fail, it's kind of how you pick yourself back up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't just kind of perseverate on your failure itself, but you just have to use it and learn from it.
Oh yeah.
Then you can learn from it so it doesn't happen in the future. And then you can also teach others how to avoid the mistakes that you made. And so,
Big facts.
yeah, I think that, a little bit of failure humbles you too.
Yes,
I,
sir.
I definitely was humbled whenever I had my failures in life. But it's all part of life, I think, to learn and grow from them.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad you phrased it the way you did. I'm big on in therapy, I'm big on, and we talk a lot about reframing, like the way you
Mm.
see something, like give it a different approach to how you
Mhm.
see something. So you talk about failure, a lot of times we get knocked down and it could feel just like that. Like against this insurmountable odd. I'm on the ground looking up. I don't know how
Mhm.
I'm going to beat this, you know?
Mhm.
And especially going back to your point about when we're going through college, if we don't have these people to guide us through these things,
Mhm.
it can feel like you're blind, just kind of going and trying stuff.
Mhm.
And when you find a way to make it through, though, understanding that that challenge will be there, that great people or successful people have had to go through similar circumstances. I hope that that gives people and inspires hope and courage within them to continue persevering. And
Mhm.
I will back up everything you just said because I've had to do my fair share as well. And so for those that want to go down any path, even if you get immediate success, even if you get quick success, right?
Mhm.
Understanding it can be taken from you.
Absolutely.
But if you can stay the course, if you can stay hungry, stay disciplined, stay motivated, I think it can play out for us in a positive way. But we have to be willing to stay on that path and not deviate as much. But I wonder sometimes, and obviously we're in a slightly different age demographic than the guys obviously underneath us and women underneath us. I wonder sometimes if they are not quite as resilient as maybe we had to be
Mhm.
willing to push through as much. Not because you want life to always be so hard, right? We
Mhm.
don't want it to be like there's
Mm-mm.
something to be said about challenge. Challenge in itself isn't bad, but
Mhm.
there is a thing when you give somebody so much that they can get overwhelmed, where
Mhm.
you might lose somebody, right? You might lose a potentially great doctor because the circumstances of life are just too much and it just, beat him to a pulp.
Mhm.
Do you wonder, or have you noticed anything when it comes to maybe like the people who are under you, maybe years behind you, of things that they might have had more struggle with that you were able to overcome in your time?
Um, you know, um, the generations that are under us now, their lives are so different, I think, because of social media.
Yes,
And
sir.
so they have the opportunity to look at how other people around them are doing, or the false sense of, that everyone on social media, what they're posting is like these great, fantastic lives. And, here I am in my room and I'm bored and I have nothing to do. And everyone's traveling or taking these, fantastic photos of dinners and stuff like that.
Right,
And so
right.
I do think that, the younger generations have that, comparison. Like, for us, we didn't really look at each other like that. Like, we can kind of
No.
like, hey man, how's it going? What you up to? Like, we
On the
didn't
phone,
really
actually.
yeah, yeah, actually on the phone. This is actually like a phone where you used to hold,
Yeah, not
not
just
the
scrolling.
yeah. And so I can see why people younger than us have more of a struggle being motivated because, if you're looking at everyone around you, quote unquote, succeeding or having these great lives, you
Yeah,
might feel more depressed or unmotivated that, there's something wrong with you because, you're not living the lives that you're seeing on social media.
yeah,
And so it's really important to educate people that like social media is fake, right? I mean, you're only putting the best part of yourselves on social media because a lot of people are afraid to
Whew.
show their vulnerability,
Big facts, big
you
facts,
know? And
big
so
facts.
you kind of just have to put your head down sometimes and ignore the social media and just really focus on you. I mean, there are benefits to social media. There's so much access to resources and,
Yes, sir.
opportunities like your podcast where you can hear experts in the field just discussing stuff, for free, right? Pretty
Right,
much.
right.
And so there are benefits if you utilize the right resources. And so if you're searching out like TED Talks or you're searching out, advice from the experts, and here's a time where you don't, like we talked about, we didn't have access to help. These days, if you really seek it out, you can find help.
Yeah.
And so the opportunities are there. It's just kind of how you decide to go down which path. And so
No, that's so important, man. I gotta emphasize that part because I talk about that so much, man. Like, just I consider myself relatively new to the social media game in terms of like the big platforms,
mhm,
Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok. Because Facebook, we came up with that, but that's kind of old now. Snapchat
mhm,
somewhat, but that's not necessarily on the same wave. Like big platforms where you can really reach a lot of people. I'm relatively a novice in that space, but I say that because we didn't grow up with it. So one thing
mhm,
I talk a lot about is when we talk about a sense of identity, we
mhm,
didn't have to compete necessarily with people who don't even live in our local environment,
mhm,
right? Like in those days, it was just who people maybe that you went to school with and people in your local community in
mhm,
terms of comparison.
mhm,
Now you might be on scrolling like this. There's a 17-year-old, but he's in Australia or he's in Japan or he's in Nigeria or wherever, and they're doing this, and now I feel less than. Now I
mhm,
feel inadequate because I
mhm,
can see them. Whereas you
mhm,
and I, we didn't see that. We were able to more or less put our heads down and just focus on what we're doing. So I do
mhm,
think that's important to stress that point. Just because you see something online doesn't necessarily mean it's that person's reality. And for
mhm,
me as a therapist, man, I got to echo that point you just said. Social media is not real like 100% of the time. People
mhm,
say things and they portray things to look a certain kind of way, but rarely do they tell the whole story. So when you talk about vulnerability, that's the whole purpose of this platform,
mhm,
is to be real, to talk about a lot of the stuff that we actually deal with, that we actually have to go through. And that's why very happy that you talk so much about the adversity that you've had to experience, both as a young man, just growing up in your family and in your household, and then talking about doing it through school, which is
mhm,
also very important because of the career that you chose. And a lot of us may choose careers that would require education or even graduate education. So we got to understand what we have to go through or
mhm.
what we're going to have to deal with.